Hello and welcome to Good Day Street Talk. Antoine Lewis reporting. Here's what we're working on today. The legendary artwork of Al Hirschfeld lives on in a new exhibit celebrating his life and his career. We're actually going to have some of the pieces right here in the studio. Then a little bit later, a reimagined stage production of a Christmas classic. But first, the legendary Rockettes go hand in hand with the holidays, but you may not know that all year round they spend a lot of time lifting spirits and bringing good cheer. Right. Up next, the New York Public Library's largest exhibit of Al Hirschfeld's work and archival material. And then a little bit later, as we just said, Juliana, she's going to touch our hearts with an emotional performance of Can You Feel the Love Tonight? All right, we'll wait. Welcome back to Good Day Street Talk. Al Hirschfeld left behind a tremendous legacy. You know his name. But here to tell us about a stunning new exhibit and celebration of his life and work are his wife, Louise Kurtz Hirschfeld. She's president of the Al Hirschfeld Foundation, and David Leopold, who's archivist for the same foundation. Good morning to both of you. We know we lost Al in 2003, a rich life that he lived, but we want to ask you just any fond memories when you hear the name Al Hirschfeld? Well,
it was so wonderful to know Al Hirschfeld. I knew him since I was in my early 20s, and I've worked with his work. I was in television. I was a researcher, and in theater and television, and I got to know his work very well. And I was very lucky because I knew his family very well. And I have a kind of job to do in my lifetime, and that is to have new generations of people and children understand his work and to get to know the brilliance of his work and to see the theater and other cultural events through his eyes.
He's such a institution, you know, for the city of New York. And in doing research, one of the questions that I wanted to ask you, for people who thought they knew everything about Al, you know, what would be one of the things that they may be surprised to learn? And as you're thinking, I'll tell you what I found out. I didn't know he started at Goldwyn Studios.
Oh, yeah.
Sure. I had no idea. You know.
Well, David will tell you he had an incredible career in silent movies, and he, not only that, but the great thing about his work is that he started out as a sculptor, and then became a watercolorist, and then became completely identified with pen and ink, and so he had a foundation of extraordinary work underneath the line drawings that everybody is familiar with. And David can tell you much more about that.
Well, you know, Al was a veteran of movie studios by the time he did his first theatrical caricature in 1926. He had worked for Goldwyn, Fox, the beginning of Metro,
right.
RKO, all the great studios, and he continued to work for them all during his great theatrical career. He did his first theatrical caricature in December 1926, and he came up during a Vogue for caricature, and then he became the Vogue. You know, he sort of ruled the field. You know, when you said caricature in the 20th century, most people were talking about Al Hirschfeld.
Right. So tell us, what makes it so special? Is it just, you know, the caricatures are in and of themselves, each one's uniquely different, you know, but what is it that you think brought about the uniqueness of his talent?
Well, I think, you know, we call it caricature because we have to call it something, but actually it's great portraiture, and he infused it with his personality, which he was a life-loving guy. And so when he went to the theater, whether it was the 6th or 7th production of Showboat or Hello, Dolly, he approached it as a new experience and looked at it with sort of wide-eyed wonder. He was sort of like your best friend goes to the theater and brings back something and shows you all the important things that went on, not judging whether it was good or bad, but he was a visual journalist in that regard.
Tell us about the exhibit.
Well, the exhibit is a great collection of his work from all different parts of his career at the New York Public Library for the Performing Arts at Lincoln Center. And it's all drawn from their collection. You get to see Broadway First Nighters from 1958, or get to see the original productions of Streetcar Named Desire, or Death of a Salesman, or You Can't Take It With You.
Okay.
You can see show posters that maybe you've loved for years, My Fair Lady being one of them. You'll see album covers. There's a wonderful series just on dance, because he was great with dancers. I call it Tripping the Line Fantastic.
Tell us, you brought some of the pieces, you know, that are actually going to be on display, right?
Sure.
And I know the first one is right next to you. We're going to get a shot of that. This piece is called Nina's Revenge, right?
Yes.
Tell us about Nina.
Well, I think, as everybody knows, that since 1945, since November 1945, Al Hirschfeld started to hide his daughter's name, Nina, in his drawings. It started off as sort of a joke for his friends. You know, he was a proud father, and after a couple of weeks, he stopped. And people started writing in saying, "Where's the Nina?" Spent all Sunday looking for Nina. And it became the worst kept secret in America, certainly in New York. And in 1966, he decided to restore national sanity. Instead of hiding Nina's name in the drawings, he would do a drawing of Nina and put her parents' name in the drawing.
Oh,
in this
awesome.
case, it was Al and Dolly Haas.
That's so awesome. Now, you also have a piece from the American Ballet Theater, correct?
Sure. The American Ballet Theater, full of some of the greatest dancers at that time in 1980. Again, this is Al Hirschfeld. Whether you know who the people are or not, there is nobody else who could do this. That line that just sort of dances all by itself. I mean, Jules Pfeiffer called him the Fred Astaire of ink.
I can see that. I know, I would agree with that. Now tell us about Cabaret. You have one from Cabaret also.
Oh, sure. Cabaret. Well, he drew the original production of Cabaret in 1966. He drew the film in 1972, the revival in 1987. This is the 1998 revival with Alan Cumming and Natasha Richardson, and they could almost rerun this drawing later this year or start later this season, because Alan Cumming's going to come back and do Cabaret again.
Now, you mentioned Streetcar. Already, and was this the original stage production?
The original stage production with Jessica Tandy and Marlon Brando.
Okay, and that one's that right there.
You can see Marlon Brando. Look at that, that bundle of energy of Marlon Brando.
You know what? No one wore a white T-shirt like Marlon Brando. Maybe James Dean, you know, but every man wanted to look like that in that white T-shirt. Are the names in there? Are the names outside there penciled in, or this is just straight? They're just the caricatures of the two artists.
Just the caricatures. Now, he would hide his daughter's name, Nina.
Nina
in the
would
drawings.
be in there.
Sure. And it became second nature to him. When he would finish a drawing, he would look at it and have to count the Ninas just like everybody else, because he would put a number next to his name to tell you how many to look for. A reader one time wrote into the New York Times and said it would be helpful to know how many we should be looking for. So he started adding a number, and he knew if he got the number wrong, the mail was going to be incredible. And we have in the exhibit people who write in who claim they can't find the Ninas, or that he didn't put the right number. And one fellow closes his letter saying, "Are you one of those institutions that we now have lost confidence in?"
One final piece, if we can. I'm sure. I hope we have time. Bell Book and Candle. You know, that one's unique, and that's one of those forgotten classics I like to think of. But I remember it. You know.
Oh well, Bell Book and Candle. You know, a big part of the show is about this cat playing with a ball of yarn, and only Hirschfeld could take that ball of yarn and give us the profiles of Rex Harrison and Lily Palmer.
And they were married at the time, right?
Oh yeah, they were married.
They were married.
Very much a loving show, as it were.
This is such an important legacy, Louise, that you're carrying on. Do you ever get overwhelmed, or?
Thank you. It's like a mission for me, and I love doing it. I love the work. It cheers me up. And it's so nice to look at someone's work over a whole century and to see the kind of feelings that he had for his art, for people, his humanity, which comes out in his drawings. I'll never forget when he told me that he first went up to hear Ella Fitzgerald in Harlem when she was 15 years old, and she was singing a Tisket a Tasket, and he just went wild.
He was there. That was the night that she won the amateur contest, which launched her career.
That's right. And he has done the most extraordinary drawing of her. And it shows the kind of feelings that he had and the emotion that he let out in his drawings.
So nice to meet you, and continue the good work at the foundation, making sure that that name will always resonate, Al Hirschfeld.
Thank you so much,
So nice to meet you, Louise and David. Coming up next, we're going to tell you about a